Do you connect to the community and perhaps, best said, the wise elders who, because they lived it, they have experience that they can share that might help you to be even more successful in what you're doing? What, if at all, does that connection look like?
As youth, right? Like, you know, you kind of rely on your mentors. You rely on the people guiding you, and especially if you're a woman, you rely on the women of color that are guiding you, that are teaching you, and are uplifting you. And I think that in this, right, that's how we feel inspired. And I think having these mentors and these elders to talk to us about their time, it's very, very inspirational, and it kind of does keep you from being uninspired. And I think in this work a lot, there's a lot of days, most days, that you feel like, you know, is this working? Are we doing enough? Like, what's gonna happen to us, right? And I think that the stories from elders and kind of the passion that they have in discussing about their time and what they've done and showing you pictures and just talking about it really is the inspiration, and it is the plight that keeps you going to really not give up. And I think that even when it's hard for you to be an organizer, for you to show up for your community, you look to these elders for guidance. And I think we do, and I think in the Arab community we have that, thankfully, and we have our elders that we look to, we have our mentors, we have our professors that we go to, and it's beautiful. And I think that, you know, if we don't have that, you know, you need to reach out and see who inspires you and see who's gonna guide you, and even think of who you want to be like when you grow up and things like that. So I think it's a very grateful thing to have when you have the people guiding you in your life through this work, through this really intense, hard work.
Organizer and youth organizer here in the Bay, across struggles and teaching in an ethnic studies classroom. One of the ways I know I do it, and other comrades of mine also do it, is we bring vets and OGs into our classroom. I have facilitated publicly intergenerational dialogues and strategic sort of smaller sessions, for example, with my dear friend Aaron Dixon, who's the captain of the Seattle chapter of the Black Panther Party. When he comes to town, Jules has been at some of those strategy meetings, and other student organizers, so we do even the millennial generation. And I've done that in my work with South Asian and Black youth, bringing mentors of mine like Erica Huggins and Aisha Gill with a young generation of young people to actually talk about not only pass on the oral histories and see the connection between shared struggles, but also then talk about, in a state of reflection and dialogue, what would the strategy be now to respond to the time, material, space conditions that we're dealing with? And we really have to walk with the lessons learned and maybe make some new mistakes and not make the same mistakes. But I think that work, we need to do so much more of it. And I do think that is the next 50 years part of it, is how do we be much more intentional about intergenerational work. We did it here, Los Siete, when we had everyone come in the library, and we just have to keep that work and staying at work. Do any of you, will ask other questions unless...
I just have a quick response, because the work that I do with Educational Partnerships is an education leadership pipeline that connects our youth that is as young as kindergarten with those that have been working in the community, especially in the Philippine American community. Like, I remember taking a lot of our students to meet Bill Soro or Al Robles, and then have them talk story about what they did in the 1960s with international I-Hotel struggle. We incorporate like final shows for our students to learn about the living history of people. And for our community shows, we bring in the people that have done work, and they create stories and productions based on those that have came before him, that they know that they inherit this responsibility of action. So we've been doing it. I think it needs to be maybe a wider scope. And I don't want to speak for like ethnic studies, but that would be nice, is to have maybe a class on ethnic studies mentorship from the elders, because that's what's needed. We have a lot of, when I go into different spaces, there's a lot of young folks. You know, there's a lot of people middle-aged, maybe like me, but we are missing the elders that can give us the seasoning and understanding of how to go through these different hurdles. And I think that's what's needed. So if I had like the 50 years from now, dang, let's have an ethnic studies intergenerational class that teaches young organizers to not follow, not just to chase the tail, but to make new things happen.
That's right. What do y'all think? Yeah. I'm just going to add quickly that we also need, I'm in a lot of millennial organizing spaces, even though I'm not a millennial, and we're missing a lot of the youth in those spaces, right? And so I think we need to be going in both directions when we say intergenerational building and be much more deliberate. More questions?
Can we actually hear from some of the younger folks? Some of the students, I'm sorry.
And sanctions movement started on college campuses. And that gave a really bad connotation to Palestinians everywhere, nationally. And so I guess I have a question of how do I, as a Palestinian student, combat that? How do I go about starting the conversation and let people know that I'm coming from a place of wanting peace and not from anger, which has been portrayed like throughout the media. Basically, everyone sees like Palestinians as people who just want to fight. Like, I know that I've been called a terrorist, I've been called all these different names, and so I just want to know, I want people to know that I want peace for my people and I want liberation, and I don't want that to come from the sufferings of another people, and that's something that I'm having a hard time doing. So how do you guys go about that? How do I, as a Palestinian student, go about that, especially on college campuses?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I think that's a really important question. One of the things that I've actually been, because I've been a very long time organizer and I've been working with youth across many different spheres, whether in the United States, whether inside of Palestine or anywhere else in the globe, I would say that one of the most important things is to actually join an organization. To join an organization where a lot of these contradictions and a lot of these questions, not only do they arise within our community, but then they also arise within young people that are trying to organize. And especially because what I've noticed is that oftentimes when individuals try to move forward in work, there's a lot of pressure, right? And there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of suffering versus when you're moving as a body. And when you're moving as a body, you're actually shifting the trajectory and you're shifting the politics and you're able to share resources with one another and to talk about things like the BDS Act or things that are arising on an everyday part of the community, whether it's being a part of GUPS, whether it's being a part of the Palestinian youth movement, whether it's being a part of Ereikat, or even being a part of Muslim organizations that are working on behalf of Palestine. It's just extremely important that we as people understand and that we know that we actually come from our people. And that if we're trying to move in silence in these really indirect and oftentimes indirect ways can actually be more detrimental to ourselves and to our community than it actually is helpful. So that's what I would suggest. And I would also suggest reading Frantz Fanon, Wretched of the Earth.
Oh, yes.
The amendment that there's still much to be done. That ethnic studies and fighting for ethnic studies is an ongoing battle, and that is particularly like with Ahmed, there's still 2 tenure track positions that still have not been filled and answered, and Ahmed in general is a program that we need to keep fighting for Ahmed to grow as a program. But in 2016, there was going to be a budget cut for ethnic studies in which $500,000 would have been cut from the college, and immediately student leaders like Lubna and Linda, who were part of GUPS, as well as many other student leaders, came together and realized that we as student groups who had been separated in so many ways for a long time, our power rested together. And students from these organizations, from historic organizations to also just activists, people who had been politicized through Occupy, the Arab Spring, Black Lives Matter, came together and recognized that fighting for ethnic studies was fighting for a future. And so we were able to, as a community, come together and stop the $500,000 cuts. But that, as much as it is a win, and I'm really, really happy to say that Pacific Islander Studies is finally a minor program, so I really want to congratulate Pacific Islander Studies, as well as Race and Resistance Studies now being a full-fledged department and being able to issue majors with their words. But as much as those are wins, our struggles are ongoing. So I really want to thank all the folks who are part of those struggles and acknowledge that there are so many people who don't get acknowledged in those struggles, who showed up to meetings, showed up to protests, who may not have been involved before, which I highly suggest, again, as has been reiterated, please join organizations. You make the difference. You make all the difference for just coming and sharing your personal knowledge and showing up one day to help volunteer at events. That makes all the difference in us being able to move forward as a movement.